All right, what up, guys? We already know Mr. Skip Bayless is all going to get on his feelings with Mr. LeBron James of how much pretty much he hates him and yada yada yada. We've seen this for the past decade and a half or so. So I'm prepared to hear what Mr. Skip Bayless has to see. We've all seen all about his tweets. He kind of mentioned that Rajon Rondo should be Finals MVP, then back to Anthony Davis. Then this was the easiest title ever, cakewalk, blah blah blah. We got Mr. Chris Broussard jumping in on Undisputed with Skip Bayless and Shannon Sharpe. After here, LeBron James and the crew won the NBA championship for 2020. Kudos to them. I've always stated in my videos LeBron would take the 2020 NBA championship, and they're definitely looking in a great position to repeat next season. You do have the Brooklyn Nets and the Golden State Warriors are coming back. I'm very curious to see how the Brooklyn Nets kind of mesh together. They don't have a head coach. Until around 3 weeks ago when they pulled up Steve Nash. Kyrie Irving's kind of stated in in an interview he had with Kevin Durant that basically they don't really have a head coach. They don't really need one in the senses of they know how to play their game, gel together, yada, yada, yada. So let's see if that chaotic, toxic environment, KD and Kyrie, could be a perfect mash. Two negatives equal a positive. Who knows? The Golden State Warriors, you do have Steph, Clay, Dre, the second pick in the draft, and let alone you do have Andrew Wiggins. They're going to be reloaded. I could see a couple of good veterans join that team as well. So I'm keeping my eye out on the Lakers to represent the West next season. You do have the Golden State Warriors, and don't sleep on the Clippers. I mean, everyone just pretty much threw them to 100-0, but the Clippers are still formidable with Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. But I'm not going to say the Clippers are going to win the West, but those are the top three teams in the Western Conference. But let's jump back into here in Undisputed, and I'll give my take.
MVP, Fox Sports, NBA analyst Chris Broussard joining us this morning. Chris, we've had you throughout the championship. I ask you, how impressive was this championship for LeBron?
Listen, there's a lot of people saying, "Oh, this is not really anything for LeBron, just a good accomplishment." Then there's other people on the other side stating that LeBron's the GOAT, yada yada yada. Listen, how impressive was this championship? This is a huge accomplishment for LeBron James. Basically, LeBron was 3-6. I actually liken him unto the Wilt Chamberlain of the modern day era in this new, the era here in basketball, especially in this era of the 2000s. He was pretty much the modern day Wilt Chamberlain. Wilt had a 2-4 finals record. LeBron had a 3-6. LeBron pretty much was dominant in the regular season. He'd pull up great stats, MVPs, awards, but then in the postseason, he wouldn't win as much, and that was kind of a liken to Wilt Chamberlain. But after LeBron did win this championship here, I'm not going to put him in that class anymore. LeBron has proven he can win, even though there can be some chaos, some toxicity a couple of times, and it may take 3 or 4 years, maybe even 2, for him to deliver a championship to your franchise. But LeBron James got it done with. Second stint back with Cleveland, got him a chip in their second season. Second season with the Heat, same thing, and the third season with them, and then the second season with the Lakers. So if you give LeBron James pretty much around 700 days with your franchise, there's going to be some head coaches moved around, players traded, a lot of development, construction, and just kind of, just rebuilding everything. But, if you do LeBron James kind of system his way, he'll give you a championship. Now, it's not going to be the prettiest or the smoothest flow of things, but, I mean, it is what it is. But kudos to LeBron James. I've always stated LeBron's number 5 all-time in my all-time rankings list. I did have Michael Jordan, Bill Russell, Kareem, and Magic over LeBron, but I've stated if LeBron were to win his 4th NBA championship and here with the Los Angeles Lakers, I would leapfrog him over Magic Johnson, and LeBron would most definitely be in the Mount Rushmore of the NBA. Now, there's a lot of young cats pretty much who state LeBron's the GOAT or he's the second greatest of all time. And listen, they're very dismissive of Bill Russell and a Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I mean, Kareem has the most points of all time, 6 chips. And Kareem he's been a winner since high school, college, the NBA. He was the most dominant big in the NBA, debatably. And then Bill Russell, he didn't play in the modern era, but he won 11 championships. And he didn't go against plumbers. He went against Wilt Chamberlain, Jerry West. He beat him night after night. So I don't want to hear any of that nonsense. Bill Russell has won 5 regular season MVPs, one of the greatest defensive players of all time. And whenever he retired and he was done from the Boston Celtics, they plummeted. So I don't want to hear anything about that. If you're talking about the greatest of the greats, it's going to be Michael Jordan on your Mount Rushmore. You're going to have Bill Russell on there. You're going to have Kareem, and it was Magic for me, but with LeBron James, he does enter and knocks off Magic Johnson. And very impressive for LeBron because him and Michael Jordan are the only players to have 4 Finals MVPs or more in the NBA championship world. So, for example, Magic only has 3 Finals MVPs. But, Kobe Bryant only has 2 Finals MVPs. Shaq only has 3 Finals MVPs. Kareem only has 2. They didn't count for Bill Russell back in the 60s. They started in the 70s. But for LeBron James, he just entered a whole new tier. I knew LeBron James. I've always stated LeBron James was in the same room as Michael Jordan. He was never at the same table until he just won this championship right here. Now you do have LeBron James who's just sat on the table with Kareem, Bill, and Michael Jordan.
Well, it was incredible. And I'll start with the fact that it was his 17th season. I don't take that into account. I didn't take it into account when I made my MVP vote for Giannis because I don't think you should grade on a curve. But looking at it overall, the fact that he is still the best player in the world and able to lead his team to a championship at this stage of his career is unprecedented. I go back, you look at Kareem. In his 17th year, he averaged 23 points. But he was only averaging 6 rebounds at that point of his career. He just had the skyhook, which was unstoppable. Karl Malone, 22 points, 8.5 rebounds in his 17th year, but Utah goes out in the first round of the playoffs. So we have not seen a player play this well this late into his career. So that's number one. And I got to be honest. I never said it out loud because I wasn't certain of it. But there was a part of me that thought LeBron's done winning championships. I never bought into he just came to L.A. to be in Hollywood.
And that's why all these TV pundits, these fans, they were blindsided. Whenever people would tell me, and they would say on social media, TV, that LeBron James was done winning championships, that was the most asinine thing I've ever heard. Now, I get their perspective, but they're two-dimensional thinkers. They're prisoners of the moment. You cats don't want to be like that. You want to think big picture. Like if you're thinking about, investment-wise, you got to look at the long game. And I've always looked at the long game with LeBron James and the crew. For example, whenever LeBron James left the Miami Heat, he joined the Cleveland Cavaliers whenever he was 30 years of age or 29. Skip Bayless was saying that LeBron would never win another championship ever in his career. He's done with those days. Asinine statement. Prisoner in the moment. And then whenever LeBron James pretty much he lost to Kevin Durant in the finals in 2017, everyone was stating that LeBron's done winning championships. It's just the Golden State Warriors are going to take over. And then now you add in 2019 and 2020 when LeBron had his first stint with the LA Lakers and he couldn't attract any star players. They said he was done with. He just wants to make movies. He's going to retire in like 2-3 seasons. He's not the best player in the world. Yada, yada, yada. Don't get caught up in that nonsense. I mean, you can look at my videos. I've been making this channel for 4 or 5 months. Straight off the gate, I've been proclaiming to you guys and telling you guys that the Lakers would win the 2020 championship. I said even if they did go against the Clippers, they would take them down. I told you guys there's things in the background you're not aware of right now. You got to look more into that stuff. I'm not saying this stuff is scripted or rigged, but you got to look into that. No way that the NBA was going to allow LeBron James not to win this championship when the Warriors were hurt all season. The Nets are not in the equation. Kobe Bryant's passing. AD is about to be a free agent. What else? You got a couple other stuff in there I can't even think of. I'm just freestyling as of right now. But there were so many signals that told you that the Lakers would win the championship. And for LeBron James to capture his 4th ring, this is huge for his legacy. I'm talking huge. I'll actually entertain the debate for him and Michael Jordan now. Before, I would scoff at it. But now, I will listen to what people say. And when people are going to proclaim that LeBron's the GOAT, they're going to use quality over quantity. They're going to say his 2 championships with the Lakers and the Cleveland Cavaliers, they're going to build more of a narrative. They're going to build more drama, build more of a storyline of the impact of how he won, who he went against, the circumstances. And then for Michael Jordan, they're going to brush that off. So that's the thing it's going to be with LeBron James. Even if LeBron does reach 6 NBA championships, which isn't fair play, and I've stated this around a month or two ago, he could potentially, with the NBA's help, they could probably win a three-peat. Keep an eye on that. I don't logistically in the moment right now, thinking how that can happen. You're thinking that's asinine. I get it, but you guys thought the same thing whenever, I was saying the Lakers would win the 2020 championship, and I said that back in 2019, whenever they didn't have Anthony Davis, whenever Magic Johnson was the president of basketball operations, whenever Mario Hezonja blocked LeBron and stood over him, and proclaimed that LeBron's not the king. And I mean, if you go back into 2019 and the Lakers didn't even make the playoffs, all that chaos was going around there. No one stated that the Lakers would win the 2020 championship. I held my ground. I knew how this would play out. Now, looking at it right now, I haven't made a clear-cut decision on my predictions for 2021, but I can tell you right now what I've seen so far. The Lakers will represent the Western Conference, and yes, they will win the 2021 NBA championship. No one in the Western Conference is going to come across them. The Clippers, ever since they fired Doc Rivers, I knew that team would not take down the Lakers. They don't have an identity. You just fired their head coach, who wasn't the best coach, but he fit their identity, if anything. Even though they didn't really have chemistry and a culture, but Doc Rivers he just fit with those type of dogs, not dogs, but quote-unquote guys. The Warriors, it's not their time. They had their era. This is LeBron's era now. The NBA is going to give him back to him. He's going to three-peat, I think. I don't know, but he's definitely, if he wins 2021, which is looking like it's going to be, I think everything's just set up for a three-peat. I mean, I'm just stating how it is. This 2020 free agency class is whack. Anthony Davis is only the star player. He's going to re-sign with the Lakers. And then the other cats are what? Yeah, DeMar DeRozan and then like Serge Ibaka's of the world. That's it. These teams are going to stay the same, these franchises. No one in the West is going to touch the LA Lakers. And since LA is coming out of the West, they're going to win the championship. They're probably going to go against the Celtics. They're both tied at 17 all time. They're probably going to, override them in storyline. If not that, I think it's either going to be the Celtics or the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Lakers will play the Nets in one of the finals, either 2021 or 2022. That's to be determined. I don't know, but let me jump back into here. I've been talking too much.
Good and make movies. He wasn't trying to win. I thought he was trying to win, but I just felt like at this stage of his career, I'm not sure he's going to have enough to help lead a team or to lead a team to a championship. And obviously, he proved that wrong. Secondly, the bubble. Look, we saw Giannis and Paul George and even the Clippers just fall apart mentally in the bubble. We heard
Giannis and Paul George were atrocious in the bubble. Now, the Bucks are a type of team with Giannis. Giannis is young. He needs fans. He needs the energy. And playing in the bubble in a neutral ground where there's really no hype, no type of vibes of any of that nature. There's no home court. So that's how a team like the Miami Heat flourished. They're designed to be a playoff team in that type of location. The Bucks were never. They never caught a groove. Same thing with the LA Clippers. And the Clippers could have resembled the Heat, but they just talked the talk. They never walked the walk. But the Clippers just mentally were done with. Lou Will was a bunch of, stripper locations. Montrezl Harrell got there late. No one was there mentally. They didn't even want to play in the bubble. Paul George even stated in an interview that he needed NBA fans. He needed that crowd, allegedly, but,
Those other two players I mentioned talk about how stressful it is. That to outlast everyone else in the bubble shows not only physical excellence, but mental excellence. You got Kobe. LeBron took it on his shoulders. He said, look, he told his teammates.
Man, I always knew 2020 was to the Lake Show Lakers, but man, whenever Kobe Bryant passed away in January, you guys can say what you want. That was a blood sacrifice. Listen, there's no way the day after LeBron James passes Kobe Bryant in, it was like points or something, whatever, amount of games, Kobe Bryant passes away. I mean, come on, man. And usually in the NBA, whenever you have a star player sacrifice either one of their family members or you see someone close to them that hits the news, something always happens that they get star treatment. They get to win. They usually have to do a blood sacrifice. You guys can look more into that deeper section of YouTube. I'm not going to go that deep with it, but you guys just need to be aware with these things. You cannot just sit back and just read the headlines, watch First Take every day, and that's that. No, do your research, watch the game, watch the interviews, watch the hand signals they throw up, what they wear. You got to look at all this stuff, man. That's why I easily stated the Lakers would win the 2020 chip. And y'all, I mean, you guys can say what you want. Listen, I put up objectivity when it comes to this, but I understand this is an entertainment league for a reason. And some type of cults and some type of Masonic group most of these cats are in. And this is with most celebrities. You got rappers, you got artists, and then as well as you got ball players as well. Let's be real.
It was reported, God gave me broad shoulders for a reason after Kobe died. So he was telling them, I'm going to carry us to a title. So to follow up on that, impressive. Obviously, the social justice stuff. So this was really impressive to me. I will say this, though. Basketball-wise, as far as the competition he faced, of his 4 titles, this was the easiest competition, obviously in the finals. But, you know.
No, sir. No, sir. Listen. These cats are out of there, man. Listen, with LeBron James and the Lakers, his first round matchup and his second round matchup of the Portland Trail Blazers and the Houston Rockets were the toughest first and second round matchups probably for any star in a long time, and especially for LeBron James' whole career. The Portland Trail Blazers were supposed to be a 4th or 5th seed this season. Nurkic and Collins were hurt and they're bigs, and they pretty much could never bounce back from that. Now, whenever they got healthy, Damian Lillard went ham and went off in the bubble. You're going against you're going against a star player in Damian Lillard, who's a top 10 player in the league. And with that dynamic offense, and you had people stating that the Blazers could upset the LA Lakers. These same people said that the Blazers could upset the Lakers. And the Blazers took game 1 and they kept that position. Charles Barkley would say that, yet everyone else. Now, number 2. They went against the Houston Rockets, and that was a tough matchup for the Lakers. Even though the Lakers beat the Blazers and the Rockets and the gentleman's sweep, that was still a tough matchup. That was, even though they won in 5 games, you can't look at it two-dimensionally thinking, oh, that was an easy series. It was not whatsoever. There was some stress on the Lakers. Offensively, they did not have that offensive rhythm. Rondo was hurt those series. And you had better offensive teams. You know, dynamic shooters. The Blazers had shooters. They had Damian Lillard go ham. The Rockets, you have James Harden and Russell Westbrook. No one could guard James Harden. And he can pull 40 a night. And the Lakers took him out. And we had TV pundits stating that the Rockets would take down the Lakers. The Rockets were like 60% favorites over the Lakers by ESPN. Now, I will give LeBron on this. I will give you guys this. On the conference finals and NBA finals, those were respectable teams, but the Lakers were they were a higher tier when it came down to the Nuggets and the Heat. Let's be real with that. Now, I understand both series, I expected to be 6 games. I thought it would be a hard-fought challenge. But whenever you have LeBron James go against a Jimmy Butler and a Jokic, these guys are inexperienced. LeBron's head over heels over these cats, and I knew they were going to win. And LeBron kind of got a break not going against the Clippers. I still expected the Lakers to beat the Clippers in 7 games. It would have been a close one. But still, the Lakers still would have taken down the Clippers. And the Clippers, that's on their fault, man. The Nuggets took them down. You blew a 3-1 series lead. Mentally, you guys weren't even there. And with the Miami Heat, they had a couple of injuries, but still, a lot of cats were saying the Heat would take down the Lakers in the finals. No one ever in a series said that the Lakers were clear-cut favorites to win, let alone the championship. I'm the only person who's ever stated that.
In 2012, he was down 3-2 to Boston in the conference finals in the East, had not yet won a title. So that was major pressure. And then they faced that really talented and young OKC team with the 3 future MVPs. And then after that, you got San Antonio. Obviously, that's tough. And then
if we're talking NBA Finals, if I'm going to rank it from hardest to easiest, the hardest and most best accomplishment was 2016 against the 73-9 Warriors. There should be no debate about that whatsoever. That Warriors team never lost back-to-back games in the whole season, playoffs, and the finals. They never did. They were arguably the greatest team of all time, the best backcourt offensive shooting set, the greatest pair of a point guard, shooting guard, dynamic duo of the Splash Brothers. That was a generational talent team. And one of the greatest teams of all time, LeBron James, for them to come back and beat them 3-1, winning 3 games in a row, 2 at Oracle. Amazing accomplishment. It seems like that was just off of a different dimension. I mean, it's crazy. It feels like a fairy tale. You guys can think if it's scripted, rigged. I have my position on that. I'm not going to get into it. But the second toughest and hardest in the NBA Finals, the second hardest matchup in the NBA Finals, if you're looking at the beginning of the series, was actually against the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, a lot of people had the Thunder winning that series against the Miami Heat. They were young, but that team was like a 2015 Golden State Warriors. But if we're talking about the whole series, then you would have to probably go with the Spurs in 2013 were up there. That was a tough series. The Heat were clear-cut favorites to win that series. It should have never gone 7. The Heat probably should have won that series in 6, if you're talking about the beginning of that series. And then now we have this series right here. I've always expected the Lakers to beat them, but this was a pretty close series starting from the gate. There were some injuries, but still, the Lakers did their job. And every time the Lakers do their job, the media and the LeBron haters, the LA Lakers haters, they always diminish the other teams. Instead of saying that the Blazers would upset the Lakers, they're like, oh, no, Damian Lillard was injured and this happened. They weren't even that good anyways. They were just 35-39. Or even with the Rockets. They said, oh, the Rockets have too much offensive power, 2 stars. They're going to take down the Lakers. Lakers don't have enough shooting. And then when the Lakers win 4-1, they're going to say, oh, well, it was Russell Westbrook. He choked. James Harden isn't that guy. He needs to be traded to Philly. Yada, yada, yada. I mean, it's ridiculous, man. Like, people are toxic. But
2016, you got to come down from 3-1 against a 73-win Golden State team.
Oh, LeBron is already complaining. He's talking about the living accommodation. They're talking about the food. Yada, yada, yada. Now, all of a sudden, he wins. Oh, it was the bubble. They didn't have to travel. First of all, we see what people are doing when they are not in a bubble. They don't even want to stay home. And you talk about you cannot leave. You got to remain there and do this for 95 days. So the mental game was much stronger for LeBron than
easily. And I'll be real with you guys. I've stated LeBron's not really a mentally strong type of leader individual. I don't think he's the greatest leader. He can get there. Again, he'll win a championship 1 every 3 years, something along the lines. There's going to be toxicity. He'll trade you, yada, yada, yada. But, I mean, LeBron will get a championship. I mean, it is what it is when it comes down to it. Out of all 4 championships, this is the second greatest achievement in the rankings because you won with the LA Lakers. You won in the bubble. You won for Kobe. And this is your 4th championship. I put this number 2 all time. Number 1 all time is against the Warriors, of course, for Cleveland. Number 3 all time for achievement in the rankings. You got to put the 2013 San Antonio Spurs. Tough series. LeBron James came through in the clutch of Game 7. Great performances. And then 2012, that'll be his least of the least. LeBron did his thing. He was amazing. But, I mean, compared to the other series, that's how it goes.
than a lot of people previously gave him. But Chris, to look at what this man did in year 17, he averaged 27, 11, and 9 throughout the entirety of the playoffs. He was 30, 12, and 8.5 on 59% shooting and almost 40% from the 3. And for a second there, people talk about, well, he ain't the best player. Kawhi taking the shot. Kawhi chose to play with Paul George and Pat Bev over AD and LeBron. Chris, let that sink in. That's a special type of somebody.
Well, no, Kawhi Leonard made the right decision going to the Clippers and bringing in Paul George. I don't care what you guys say that they traded 6 first-round picks. You had to do it if you're Kawhi Leonard. You needed Paul George. Jimmy Butler did not want to join with him. Kevin Durant did not want to join Kawhi. You needed a second star. You needed a dynamic duo, and that's what Kawhi was familiar with. He was not going to join LeBron and AD after winning a championship. He had to be the number one guy. He had to go to a Los Angeles franchise, and he knew the Clippers were where they're at. Now, Kawhi folded especially in Game 7 against the Nuggets. That's on him, but it's the first season. He's going to bounce back. I mean, you guys can't be prisoners in the moment. A lot of you cats are. I never expected the Clippers to win the 2020 chip. I've always expected them for 2021 to make a great case. I mean, they could, but looking at the scope of things, I just kind of foresee the NBA with LeBron and AD to make a run for a repeat and possibly a three-peat. I think this is their era. Kawhi may be done with championships. I don't think it's the NBA's best interest to make him, a winner like that. He's not. He's elite. He's a second greatest player in the world, but he's not that type of cat, if you know what I'm trying to say, legacy-wise.
Right there, they would do something like that. I want to compete against LeBron. Well, go compete. My guy's the GOAT now. My guy's the last guy standing, Skip Bayless. 30, you saw what he did last night, and that was ho-hum. Skip, you said that was ho-hum. 20.
Hey, Uncle Shay, where's the GOAT mask?
28, 14, and 10 is ho-hum. Chris, this man is his excellence.
All right, we're skipped.
Whatever weak GOAT argument you had a last dance when the last dance aired. That was the end. That was the last dance for your argument that he is the GOAT.
What was really crazy was after LeBron won in 2016 against the Warriors, that's when they started, running and rerunning and airing out the film session for everything for the last dance, which was pretty funny. But I know Michael Jordan knows he's the GOAT. He doesn't have to proclaim it. He knows LeBron has to, quote-unquote, try to catch him in 6, 7 rings, if anything. But Michael Jordan understands the liberal media. He understands these young cats who pretty much base everything off emotion, and they're going to proclaim LeBron as the GOAT since he's playing in the NBA today. And they need to look up to someone, and they want to be proud of their generation. So that's how it goes. But LeBron James is not the greatest player of all time. He's not the GOAT. I'm never going to say never. I would like for LeBron to reach up to 6 to 7 rings. If LeBron reaches 6 rings, which I kind of expect him to, since he won this championship, I kind of expect the three-peat to go down with. And LeBron, he can play for another 5, 6 seasons. I expect him probably to play for 4 more. But if you got another 2 more seasons with Anthony Davis, I expect you to get 6 championships. But he better get 6 Finals MVPs. If he doesn't get 6 Finals MVPs, he's not going to be the GOAT. If he gets 6 chips, 6 Finals MVPs with that three-peat, I'm probably still going to have to put MJ as the GOAT by a few points ahead. But, I mean, it's just tough. I mean, MJ won 6 championships in 7 seasons he played in. I mean, he got 2 three-peats. He was the number 1 guy. He was efficient. 33 points in the finals, 10 scoring titles. I mean, this cat was unbelievable. 5 regular season MVPs. And he was no one would defeat him whenever he was in his prime. So, besides that, when he came back 17 games and played against Shaq and them. But, I mean, it is what it is. But, I mean, with LeBron, again, like I stated, he'll give you a chip every 3 seasons or so. I mean, there's going to be a lot of toxicity, chaos, a lot of embarrassing moments. I'm never going to say never to be the GOAT. I can't. Even if he won 6 chips, I can't see him being the GOAT. He would definitely be the second greatest of all time, but LeBron has to get 7 chips. I doubt he'll ever do it. That's too much for his plate, being about to be 36 and being the main guy to win 4 more chips. But if he were to, you got to win 7 chips if you want to be the undisputed greatest player of all time. 7 Finals MVPs, 7 chips. I know it's a lot to ask, but Michael Jordan raised the bar so high, we can't diminish it just for someone else to catch it. And I'm going to be real with you guys. But of course, I'm still open-minded. I evaluate every season as it is. As of right now, LeBron James is number 4 all-time on my list. Of course, this could change within the week or 2 to maybe either the 3rd greatest player of all time. I doubt the 2nd, but I want to let things soak in. I want to see what I just evaluated. I want to be a prisoner in the moment. But I understand he's at least, or at worst case, the Mount Rushmore of the NBA at number 4, which is a good spot for him. He's got 4 chips. If he can rack up chip number 5, he will be, for me personally, if he wins his 5th NBA championship, 5th Finals MVP, he will leapfrog over Bill Russell and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar on my list because he's going to pass Kareem in points all time in the regular season. He's going to have 3 more Finals MVPs than Kareem. And then for Bill Russell, even though Bill Russell has 11 championships, LeBron's impact in the modern era to do this And for different franchises, it's unheard of. So I'm really excited to see LeBron try to get that 5th championship, because now that's when things will get very interesting.
You can say it all you want, but in the end, what did we just witness?
Greatness.
We witnessed Chris Broussard.
Oh, Skip. He's the GOAT. He's the greatest player of all time, Skip. Come on, Skip. Chris, nod with me.
Told us up front, this finals is an epic mismatch. I concurred. That's what it was. The 2 best players on one team finally overwhelmed and overcame whatever masterpiece aberration performance Jimmy Butler gave you in 2 games of this series. I didn't expect it from Jimmy.
Listen. Hey, kudos to Jimmy Butler. I mean, he doesn't have the stamina to do that every single game. But listen, Michael Jordan was up 3-0 in the NBA Finals. He lost the next 2 following games, and he closed out in Game 6. Don't knock LeBron James for being up 3-1, losing Game 5. He bounced back in Game 6, winning by 30 points. He was mentally prepared. It's all about the end goal. There's going to be some upsets for a couple games in the finals, but at the end of the day, you want to know who won the championship. That's all that matters. So I don't want to hear anything about Game 5. LeBron played beautifully. It didn't happen. They didn't win the game. It's fine. Just like the Toronto Raptors and the Warriors 2019 Finals Game 5, Kawhi and the crew were up 3-1 at home. Kawhi made the last 10 points in the 4th quarter. It looked like it was destiny for the Raptors to close them out, but it didn't happen. I mean, it is what it is.
Jimmy Butler, he's never done anything quite like this. Twice he did it, and they stole 2 games that you should not have lost. You should have won both those games. You should have swept this team. You were a prohibitive favorite in this series.
No, sir. No. I had so many cats say that the Miami Heat were going to win the series. And then you have people on the other side saying the Lakers. But this was an evenly close series. This was 50-50. It was. Ever since Game 1 when there was injuries. And the injuries happened after the Lakers had a groove and they were blowing them out. So I don't want to hear any of this nonsense. The LA Lakers exposed the Miami Heat. Of course, we all knew that the Lakers had, they had the bigs with AD, Dwight, and then you had LeBron James as a big small forward / point forward on the team that the Lakers couldn't handle. But the Miami Heat still had weapons out there. They still had a great defensive team with Iguodala and Jimmy Butler that people proclaimed that they could slow down LeBron. And again, another finals, that was not the case.
They were 75-1 in the preseason to even get to the finals. That's by far the longest odds of any finals team since.
Well, if that's the case, Mr. Skip Bayless, then why were people picking the Miami Heat to beat LeBron James and the crew before Game 1 of the finals? I mean, that's an asinine statement. Y'all still had the Miami Heat to win the championship against the LA Lakers. So that stat is irrelevant.
That stat has been kept. And this team in Game 1 lost its leading playoff scorer, Goran Dragic. And it lost its heart and soul and its energizer, Bam, in Game 1. And he came back after a game and tried to play, and he was never quite the same. He didn't look like that guy I saw.
Well, let's be real. Goran Dragic, before he was injured, he was okay in Game 1. The Lakers still blew him out when he was still playing. Game 7, Dragic, he was probably around 60%, but the Lakers still blew him out for a reason. Goran Dragic, even though he gave you 20 a night in the playoffs, he was a great scorer. The Lakers had him on check. They knew how to play against Goran Dragic and the crew. I think with the Miami Heat, on their part, you can't use that as an excuse. You still had an abundance amount of weapons and defensive length, just not for the big Anthony Davis.
Throughout the
That's what AD do to people.
Oh, okay, yeah, AD. He's a tough guy.
Yeah, use all that. Sucked it up with that ankle, had a bum ankle and sucked it up.
I thought he was really going to wear down, and I think he was a candidate to get hurt down the stretch.
I can't tell.
I told you that the Clippers needed reps, R-E-P-S, and LeBron badly needed rest, R-E-S-T.
Clippers needed an intervention. Because from what you heard too, Chris Broussard, there was a lot of things that have nothing to do with reps. It had to do with chemistry. Because they looking at these two guys like, hey, we were just as good with y'all not here than you were when he was here.
So LeBron.
And listen, LeBron James and the Lakers, they beat the Clippers the last 2 games they played. The one was before the pandemic, and then whenever the first game in the bubble. LeBron and the crew took him down, so I don't want to hear this nonsense.
James got to sit back and say, the bubble? Thank you, God, for the bubble, because I don't have to travel.
No, sir. The LA Lakers eliminated their home court advantage whenever they entered the bubble. So, no.
At age 35, no flights. I can go 5 minutes to the arena, and everybody else is screwed up in the bubble except me because I got a chance to go steal my 4th ring, and that's what he did.
Hold up, Chris, before you go, Chris.
Oh, wow, Mr. Skip Bayless. So you say all of this, but in the beginning of the bubble, you did not have the Lakers winning the championship. Okay.
Who else was it? So the Lakers were the only team that's not having to travel in the bubble, right? So everybody else had to travel. They had to go from L.A. and come back to the bubble.
Half the Clippers did not even want to travel to the bubble in the first place.
Because they knew they already knew it was going to happen.
Yeah.
They didn't want to see GOAT James.
Yeah. Your ring should say should have an inscription on the inside that says "Avoided Clippers." You didn't have to deal with Kawhi and Paul George and Doc Rivers because you would have lost to them. Because even Vegas said you would have lost because they.
Listen, the Lakers took down the Denver Nuggets, who beat the Clippers. The Lakers took them down in 5 games. The Clippers were exposed to the Dallas Mavericks, who the Mavericks could have won that series if KP was not injured, let alone suspended. But the Denver Nuggets exposed the Clippers back again. The Lakers would have done the same thing. I don't want to hear Mr. Skip Bayless. Your team lost a 3-1 deficit to a bunch of young cats. That's embarrassing. Imagine if they would have went against a player who went to 9 finals and was on a mission. They would have took down the Clippers in 6 to 7 games. I've always stated 7, but after seeing the Mavericks and Nuggets series, that probably would have went 6. Somewhere in that mix. But I don't want to hear all this talk about LeBron James had an easy NBA championship matchup with the Miami Heat. Listen, you guys were not complaining, and you're not even complaining about Shaq and Kobe beating the 76ers, the Indiana Pacers with Reggie Miller, the Sixers with Allen Iverson all alone out there, who looked like the 2007 Cavaliers, and then going against and beating the Jason Kidd New Jersey Nets. I don't want to hear any of that. LeBron James finally got an easier finals opponent. Not an easy. It was a very respectable team who could have won the finals, as some people predicted for them to be. There's a couple of injuries. It's happened. LeBron's played in finals to where his players and main guys got hurt. It is what it is. LeBron, quote-unquote, kind of got a break, but he took advantage of it in great fashion. He took great advantage of it. So I don't want to hear any of this, Mr. Bayless. It's petty.
They were the favorites going into the playoffs, and Chris Broussard, my friend, picked them before the playoffs.
I tried to get Chris.
I had picked the Clippers, but I had.
Because you were a prisoner of the moment. You and Mr. Rob Parker were, and Mr. Skip Bayless were, and probably Colin Coward and some of these other cats as well. You're prisoner of the moment. I get your perspective. The Clippers, their team and makeup looked like the chemistry and fits and roles were perfect, and you add a superstar and you add a star player there. I get your perspective. It looked nice. The pieces look like they fit, but when it comes to LeBron and AD, that's just too much. And you put in the Lakers' chemistry where the Lakers' chemistry was so beautiful. They were in sync. The first couple of games, and even though they had Jared Dudley and Caruso who barely played, I knew that was the championship team. I knew it. Even though I picked them before, but visually seeing it was destined. I knew they were going to win a chip. Dwight Howard, everyone was accepting their role. They were a unit. And I knew it was a championship bust season for the Lakers, especially with those one-year deals of Rondo, JaVale McGee, Dwight Howard, I think Avery Bradley. Man, that team was in sync. The Clippers, they didn't have an urgency. They were just like the cool kid who pretty much, think they got everything going on. And then whenever, it's the big football game to actually arrive, then they choke. But the Lakers, they were that kid, they were humble. Everyone was talking about the Clippers and the big cool kid, but the Lakers were that, the young Kobo kid who was like, all right, let me go out here every day, let me practice, let me stay focused on my mission, let me get my team together. And they were ready, and they did it. They didn't talk the talk, they walked the walk.
I come to believe, and I said it on another show, I come to believe that the Lakers were going to beat the Clippers. Because the Clippers just weren't right. Now, we'll see if they can get right next year, but they clearly weren't right.
Ever since Mr. Broussard, Chris Broussard, ever since he said that Kawhi would stay with the Raptors due to the sources, dude, he's been taking L's. He's been falling off. And he was on the Clippers, all season with Mr. Rob Parker. I mean, they were claiming that Kawhi was either the best player in the world or, LeBron wasn't. I mean, they were just, gosh. I'm finally glad that this can actually rub off on their faces to see how wrong and blinded they were the whole season. The whole season.
This year, I'm going to say this too. And it's always going to be a factor in the GOAT discussion, and rightly so. But I do think the narrative on LeBron needs to shift, because what happened against Dallas in 2011 sticks with him, where he just melted down in those finals. And from that point on, people have...
Listen, if you're still going to throw out the 2011 Mavericks out of LeBron's whole career and legacy, that's very petty to do. Now, if you're talking about GOAT debate, yeah, throw it out there. But, dude, LeBron's won 4 chips, 3 different franchises. I mean, listen, LeBron's 4-6 in the finals. But, man, who else in the NBA has won 4 finals MVPs? Only Michael Jordan. So I don't want to hear any of this nonsense about 6 L's. He's got 4 chips. No one else has done that for 4 finals MVPs. I mean, Kobe Bryant fans are claiming out he's got 5 rings. Kobe Bryant was the second option for 3 of those rings. Shaq won 3 back-to-back-to-back finals MVPs. Kobe Bryant was not the main player, let alone he was not the best player in the world. Kobe Bryant only has 2 finals MVPs. Sit down. You're talking about Magic Johnson. Magic Johnson, of course, was the driving force, but you got James Worthy and Kareem who won finals MVPs, while Magic only had 3. That's why I put LeBron James leapfrogging over him, who has 4 finals MVPs. I mean, Tim Duncan, 5 chips, but he has 3 finals MVPs. He was always the core and foundation for the Spurs, but he was not always the best player and the main guy. LeBron James has kind of made his career a little bit harder because he wants to run his own system. He wants it on his terms, kind of in a bratty way, to where he wants to be always the greatest player to win the championship and the reason. And, yeah, you won 4 championships doing that. I mean, kudos, man, but you've lost 6 of them kind of to that same formula. So you can get mad at LeBron. You can say he has 6 L's, but he's got 4 W's using that formula. And that's better than everyone else pretty much in the NBA besides Michael Jordan. And, with Kareem and Bill, debatable as well. But I'm going to close it off in here. Mr. Skip Bayless is salty as usual, especially when he said Rondo had a chance to win Finals MVP. Mr. Shannon Sharpe, do your thing, man. Go to the parade. Keep yelling out, GOAT James, even though I don't even agree with that. But Mr. Broussard, I think you need to take a long vacation. You've been taking too many L's, man. But kudos to LeBron James. Keep it up. I'm expecting a repeat. It's not my pure prediction right now. It's looking like the way it is. I'll make another video for that. Jump out in.